Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Schaefer. Before we get to our case today, we'll give people a few minutes to join while I do a few introduction things. First, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all the social media that we're on. And if you find this live to be helpful to you or to somebody you know, please share it as well. The second thing I wanted to announce is that tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 8 p.m. Central Time and 7 p.m. Mountain Time, we will be having episode 11 of Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? Invite you all to watch. It's a lot of fun. It's my game show where I have two attorneys compete to see who can pass the naturalization test first. So we have a good show coming up tomorrow. So I invite you all to tune in live. It will also be on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So with that in mind, let's get to our case today. So today's case I'm very excited about because it occurred in I gotta say, for USCIS is what seems like a record time. Client, I thought I had done a notable approval on his case years ago. I don't remember if I did. I tried to find it, so I'm going to give a little bit of background information on this case, and then I'll get into the I-751, which is the petition to remove conditions on residency. So this client's a native and citizen of Germany. He came to the U.S. on an E-2 treaty visa, so he started a business in the U.S. and he's from Germany, which is a treaty country. And in 2017, he had to renew his E-2 visa. They're only valid for 2 years at a time. So he had an attorney who wasn't an immigration attorney help him out. It was a family friend. And they ended up not realizing that when you file to extend your visa in the U.S., your non-immigrant visa in the U.S., you do not get a new visa. So if you need to leave the country and you want to re-enter the U.S., you're going to have a problem because you're going to have an expired visa. So in order to fix that problem, when you're filing, you tell them to notify the consulate, hey, I'm extending it. I'm going to leave the U.S., go to my consulate, pick up the visa, come back to the U.S. But because it wasn't filed that way, we ended up having to file what's called a Form I-824, which is basically saying to USCIS, please transfer the petition abroad so that he can go basically he has to have another visa interview and get his new visa so he can re-enter. And the reason he had to do that was because his brother was getting married in Germany. So in order for him to re-enter, even though his E-2 extension was approved, he needed the visa. So that was step one. Step two was he was dating a U.S. citizen for a very long time. They were planning to get married, and they wanted to know, well, how do we do that with the E-2? And one complication came when he wanted to depart the U.S. and he wanted to re-enter with his E-2, but then the E-2 hadn't been transferred in time, but that wasn't it. That's why I was getting confused. The E-2 had to be transferred in time because we didn't file until after he got back. So he comes back, but he ended up getting married to her pretty quickly after re-entering the U.S. Now, the Trump administration changed some of the rules here, and it's possible it'll get changed back. But for now, if you get married within, I think it's 90 days to a U.S. citizen, within 90 days of your entry into the country, there's a presumption that you lied at the border, that if you entered as a non-immigrant, but then you married a U.S. citizen within 90 days, they're going to say, well, you didn't have any intention of coming here temporarily because you so quickly married a U.S. citizen. There are other triggering events that can occur to give a presumption of fraud. So this client ended up getting married within the 90 days somewhat. But it had really nothing to do with his intent at the time he entered the country. His intent was real. He wanted to continue his business, and they were planning to get married in the future. They didn't know when. They kind of decided, hey, let's go to Vegas, let's get married. We love each other. We want to, what's the point in waiting? And if he gets a green card, obviously travel's a lot easier. So they get married, and I said, all right, well, you just have to explain that we should probably put an affidavit and not wait. Put an affidavit explaining beforehand, hey, when we enter, yes, we were dating, we weren't planning to get married yet. But shortly after, our plans changed because of X, Y, Z. There were certain things going on in their life that necessitated it or not necessitated it, made it more, what's the word? Palatable, not palatable. It kind of sped things up. In other words, that's where I'm going with this. So their green card was approved, I think, the day they went to the interview, like right after. And because they were married for less than 2 years, they got a conditional green card. So you want to be careful if you enter the U.S. as a visitor, and then you marry a U.S. citizen within 90 days or within 60 days or within 30 days, and then you want to file for your green card, there's going to be questions about your intent when you entered the country. Did you lie when you entered the country? And I'm not even talking about whether you have a real marriage or anything like that. We're just talking about when you got to the border and they said, what's your purpose of coming to the U.S.? And you said to visit blah, 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 or in his case, to continue running my business. And then you may get married shortly after, you're going to have to make sure you explain that. And we do like to explain that in advance in a nice detailed affidavit. So that was never a problem. And this case didn't really have any problems. This is a notable approval, not because of a problem that was overcame, but because of how smoothly everything went in this case. Really, 8 months to get an I-751 approved. Right now, they're sending out letters that say your conditional green card is extended for 18 months. 18 months. Because the reason they say 18 months, it used to be a few years ago, it was a year. They don't expect to have a decision until closer to the 18-month mark. So getting it approved in 8 months is pretty awesome. Not just that, there was no interview. So we submitted enough evidence on paper to prove that they had a real relationship, and that USCIS didn't have to ask any more questions. So let's talk about some of the evidence that we used to prove this. And yes, you do need a lot of joint financial documents if you're going to have any chance of having your interview waived. So in their case, we had multiple years of jointly filed tax returns. We had a joint lease agreement, a joint checking account, and we submitted like every few months their checking account. But it wasn't just that we submitted their checking account, they used it regularly, which is very important. If you open a checking account or a savings account or a credit card account or any account with your spouse and you don't use it or you use it very little, it's not going to hold much weight for USCIS. So that's important. Then they had a joint T-Mobile phone account. They had joint car insurance. Now this couple lives out in LA. So they had joint LA water and power account. Unfortunately, for our purposes in New York City, at least, the water and not electricity, but the water is always included in the utility bills. So we don't have water bills, but we do have Con Ed bills. They also had a joint auto, home, and umbrella policy for insurance. They had a joint earthquake insurance policy, which for California is incredibly important. We had 4 detailed affidavits, 2 from each side of the family, talking about their relationship, which if you've ever heard me talk about any of these cases that were approved before, about the evidence you can submit, I always stress how affidavits fall at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to the chain of important evidence. So you got all the, the joint finances up here. You got your taxes, your joint lease, your joint regularly used checking account and phone account and utility bills, insurance policies, stuff like that. And then at the bottom, you have affidavits. And the reason is because anybody can get anybody to write an affidavit. And especially affidavits are usually from family members or friends. So, you're going to ask your mom to write a letter in support. What's your mom going to write? Your mom's going to write, oh, of course they have a great relationship. So it's not just, if you want it to really hold any weight, it's not just that someone's writing something for you, that they're putting in details, how they know you have a real relationship, how they know you. Very important. And then we submitted a bunch of photos with descriptions. Photos are also, when I talk about all this, I talk about photos being on the bottom of the totem pole, like literally the bottom. And that's because you do not need to be married to take, or you do not have to have a real marriage to take a photo with somebody, or be married with them to take a photo with them. So the types of photos that you submit are relevant, and the time period, what you're doing. So I always say you want to look for photos where you are celebrating things like holidays or birthdays or anniversaries. You don't want to, if you just give me pictures from last month and not the entire time you've had your conditional green card, they're going to think you just took the pictures to take the pictures for them. So you want to show it over a long period of time. You want some with just you two, but you also want some with other people like family and friends, but not the same people over and over. I don't like to submit more than 10 photos. If a client gives me, all the photos with descriptions nicely written, and there's more than 10, I'm happy to submit it. But we don't want to submit repeats. It just doesn't do anything. It makes it look like you're just kind of adding in things to make it look like there's more, but in reality, there isn't much more. So these are just some good things to keep in mind when you're filing for your own. If you're wondering, hey, what is this evidence good evidence? Look, anything is good evidence if it supports the fact that you have a real marriage. Oh, and I should also mention it. I didn't talk about wedding photos. That's because you submitted those already. If you have a conditional green card, you don't need to resubmit wedding photos. They have those, they saw those, and that's old. They're really looking at the time period for the I-751 from the date you got your conditional green card to the present date, to the date you file, or if you have an interview, the date you have an interview. Because they want to see that after you got your conditional green card, you continued to have a shared life together. And showing stuff from before that time period is just not going to really be helpful for you. And the law doesn't require them to take that into consideration because they already have. With some certain exceptions, of course. So basically, what this case teaches us is that if we submit really strong evidence of our marriage, then we can have our interview waived by USCIS. And it is possible that the strength of this case was the reason it took so fast. I don't know. I know I spend not the same amount of time. I spend the relevant amount of time in every case, but I do make sure to, clearly label things, make my exhibit list. I try to make it as easy as possible for USCIS. That is one of the benefits of hiring an attorney to do it. We know how they like it to be laid out. I'm sure that went towards it too, but it was clear when you looked at this case that they had really, really strong evidence and pretty much kind of checked off every box. You don't have to have as much evidence as them to have your interview waived and to have your petition approved quickly, but the more you have, the better chance that you're going to have. And what's even more awesome is that September, which is we're in July, so less than 2 months away, this client will be eligible to apply for citizenship already if he so chooses. Because you could remain a permanent resident if you want, that's okay too. But if he does want to become a U.S. citizen, he should check out our game show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? Episode number 11. Find out what's on the naturalization civics test, because you have to get 6 out of 10 correct in order to become a naturalized citizen. So I recommend that he and anyone else watching who is interested in what these questions are like or preparing for the test themselves to come check it out. It's a lot of fun, and you learn a little bit about America, if anything. So that is all today for Notable Approvals. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, 9 p.m. Don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, so you don't miss any more of our lives. And if you found this helpful, or you think you know someone who will find this helpful, please share it. We want to spread the good information, the helpful information out there. And of course, I'm available for hire. My contact information has been scrolling across the bottom of your screen this whole time. You can also go to our Facebook page, Instagram page. All of our contact information is on there. So that is all. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.